Hello, and welcome to the instructional topic on data mining. Today we're going to talk about data and information and what exactly that means. Talk about qualitative versus quantitative data, and then we'll go through an introduction to the census and tour the census website. Planning research is really social science research. It's a blending of an enormous range of skills and activities. And to be a good social researcher, you have to be able to work well with a wide variety of people, understand the specific methods used to conduct research, understand the subject that you are studying, and be able to convince someone to give you the funds to study it. Not only that, you need to stay on track and on schedule and be able to speak and write persuasively. Here I want to introduce you to a few terms that I think help describe some of the key aspects of planning research, and some terms that we really probably need to keep in the front of our minds. First is data. Data is basically a raw collection of facts. It doesn't have any particular meaning or sequence. It's just a collection of facts that you gather. Information, on the other hand, is relational groupings of data, which turn raw facts into useful, meaningful collections. And ultimately, what we're really after is knowledge. Knowledge is a collection of the information that we've gathered that leads to awareness and understanding. Imagine doing a survey, a housing survey, as you're walking down the street, and you want to collect pieces of data on the houses, such as how big the house is, maybe what color it is, how tall it is, how many people live there, what their ages are, and you do this for all the houses on the street. What you've essentially done is collected bits of information that without any sort of relation to each other, they don't particularly have any meaning, and they don't really particularly have any sequence. But once you start to group this information together, or this data together, you'll find that you can come up with a range of ages along the street, a number of houses that are blue, how many houses are two-story, how many square foot are the houses, how many people live in the houses, and all of a sudden you start to gather a picture of this street as to what and who actually live there. And what you start to assess is a collection of information, which is knowledge about the street. There's essentially two different types of data. There's qualitative data and quantitative data. Qualitative data is data that deals with descriptions, things that can be observed but hard to measure, like colors and textures and smells and tastes. And then there's quantitative data. Quantitative data deals with numerical values, and it can be measured and quite frequently statistically analyzed. For the purposes of this class, we're going to be dealing mostly with quantitative data, but we'll be taking a look at some qualitative data as well. Another aspect to consider in data is whether it's primary or secondary data. Primary data is typically data that you collect. You're the only source for it, you are the first source for it, and it's the first time that it's being collected. Secondary data, on the other hand, is data that's readily available, like data that you'll get off of websites or trade directories or statistics from websites. The census data that we're going to be looking at today, although was at one time collected firsthand by somebody, is considered secondary data because it's already been compiled and we're going to be viewing it on the website. It's already been collected for us. We're going to spend a lot of time this semester talking about the United States decennial census. We'll be collecting information from it and data from it, analyzing that data, displaying it spatially, and quite honestly, you'll be using the decennial census in your planning career, as that's how most of our demographic information is acquired. So we're going to spend just a few minutes and just highlighting a couple key points about the census: how it started, how it's enumerated, and how it's divided up. In 1787, the Constitutional Convention established the Senate, which is a legislative body in which each state would be equally represented, and a House of Representatives, a legislative body in which representation would be based on population. The House's appointment is based on population, in part because population was easier to determine than wealth, a measure used by other countries like Great Britain to determine who counted as a citizen. The census was essentially collected door to door up until the 1960s. People would walk up to the door, assess who lived there, what their races were, and then write it down on the form and turn it in. This led to a lot of criticisms about the manual process. In the 60s and early 70s, there was experimentation with self-enumeration, which is basically mailing out the census and mailing it back in. This was done to hopefully compensate for some of the discrepancies or biases that were taken by the census takers themselves. This process of self-enumeration is the way the census is done today, aided with a lot of course, computer mapping and computer addressing. Census data historically has been divided into population and housing reports. Population with P and housing starting with an H. The P reports present data for all the questions on the census form that begin with P, and also derived data related to population, such as per capita incomes. The H series present tabulations of the housing questions. And there's also a combination, a PH report, that presents selected popular topics that were called community profiles for the Census 2000. Now, before we jump into looking at the census website, let's take a few moments and look at the census geographies and how they're divided up. The census is actually divided up into a group of nested geographies ranging from the national level, regional level, and divisions, states and counties, all the way down to census tracts and blocks. The image in the right-hand corner is showing us both census tracts, which are the larger areas, as well as census blocks, which are the yellowish shaded areas in the middle. The census has several different products on their website for download. There are summary files, American Community Survey, and PUMS data. The summary files, otherwise known as SF1 through SF4, are the main files that we'll be using in this class. SF1 is a 100% sample of the whole population of the United States down to the census block level. It has information on age, sex, race, Hispanic or Latino origin, household relationship, whether residence is owned or rented. SF2 is also a 100% sample of the whole population of the United States down to the census block level, and it has the same information as SF1 but is organized by race or tribe. No tables are available for geographic areas having a population of less than 100. Summary File 3 is a 1 in 6 sample of the population down to the census block level. Less resolution than SF1 and SF2, and it presents detailed population and housing data such as place of birth, education, employment status, income, and value of housing units. SF4 is also a 1 in 6 sample of the population down to the census tract level, has less resolution than SF1, SF2, and SF3, and it has the same information as SF3 but is organized again by race or tribe. The American Community Survey is a nationwide survey that's designed to provide communities a fresh look at how they are changing. It's a little bit more responsive than the decennial census because that's only done once every 10 years, whereas the American Community Survey has a 5-year survey, a 3-year survey, and a 1-year survey. The public use microdata sample files, or PUMS, are a sample of the actual responses to the American Community Survey and include most population and housing characteristics. These files provide users with the flexibility to prepare customized tabulations and can be used for detailed research and analysis. Files have been edited to protect the confidentiality of all individuals and of all individual households.